My name is Alexia, and I was the girl no one clapped for on graduation day. I stood there in my wrinkled cap and gown, clutching my diploma like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. My family sat stiffly in the bleachers, no cheers, no smiles. I caught my mother rolling her eyes. My aunt nudged my father and whispered, "At least the younger one's pretty." That was the moment it sunk in. I wasn't just the forgotten daughter, I was the unwanted one. That night, they didn't take me to dinner. Instead, my father told me to pack up my things and figure out life somewhere else. I left with a single backpack and no one watching me walk out the door. But what they saw as the end of my story was only the beginning. 10 years later, they would all remember my name and wish they hadn't thrown me away. When I left home the night of my graduation, I had no plan, just a bus ticket to a city I'd never seen and the name of a distant cousin who owed my mum a favor. That favor earned me a basement bedroom with no windows, a flickering light, and a mattress that smelled like mildew. But it was mine. I cried a lot that first week. Not because I missed them, but because the silence hit me like a brick. All my life, I had been trying to earn love that was never coming. And now, with no one left to perform for, I didn't know who I was without their cold glares and backhanded compliments. I got a job washing dishes at a diner 2 blocks away. The hours were brutal, the pay laughable. But the manager, Sylvie, was kind in a way that confused me. She once handed me a meal after my shift and said, "You look like no one's fed you in a while." I wanted to cry right there at the counter, but instead, I just said, "Thank you." That meal was the first warm kindness I'd received in weeks. Every night, I wrote in a notebook I found in the trash behind the diner. I jotted down numbers, ideas, little schemes that probably made no sense. One night, Sylvie saw me scribbling and asked what I was always writing. "Dreams," I said. "Stupid ones." She pulled up a stool and looked at me for a long second. "Dreams aren't stupid. Giving up on them is." That night, I Googled scholarships. Not the big glamorous ones, the weird ones. Scholarships for kids who grew up in neglect, ones for first-gen college students, for employees of small businesses. I applied to every single one like it was my job. I wrote essays by the light of a flickering lamp, using the library's printer on weekends. And then miraculously, one of them wrote back. "You've been awarded the Ray Fields Opportunity Fund," the letter said. "Full tuition, housing included." I read the email 6 times before I believed it was real. At 19, I walked onto the campus of a small but reputable university with a free education, 1 duffel bag, and a silent promise to myself: I will never beg to be loved again. I will build a life so full, so brilliant, they will regret every cruel word they ever spoke. But back then, my dreams were still small. I wasn't thinking about changing the world. I just wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere. In my first year, I studied marketing. I didn't have the confidence to major in business yet. That felt like a space for people like my sister Lauren, the pretty one, who once said to my face, "You don't have the looks for leadership." But I was good with numbers. I had a mind that never stopped seeing patterns, gaps in the market, inefficiencies. And once I realized I didn't have to be beautiful to be brilliant, things started to click. I made friends. Real ones. Not people who stuck around out of obligation, but people who liked me for who I was becoming. I shared dorm dinners, laughed over inside jokes, even joined a late-night startup club that met over cheap ramen and wild dreams. And for the first time in my life, I was starting to believe I could matter. Not to my family, but to myself. By the time I hit my 2nd year, something inside me had shifted. The girl who once folded into the corners of rooms now sat at the front of every lecture, asked questions professors remembered, and applied for internships she had no business applying to. And sometimes she got them. At one career fair, I walked up to the sleekest booth in the room, a fast-scaling tech firm with a line full of Ivy Leaguers. I wore my second-hand blazer and handed them a resume printed on the back of a library flyer. I'll never forget the recruiter's look, mildly amused, like he didn't expect me to say much. But I did. I may not come from a top school, I told him, but I've survived on 8 an hour. I've negotiated food donations for our startup club, and I can do more with a spreadsheet and a deadline than most people can do with a team. He paused. Then he smiled. 3 weeks later, I was offered a summer internship. It wasn't the most glamorous role, but I watched. I listened. I stayed late to shadow the engineers and asked the data scientists questions during their lunch breaks. When I wasn't working, I was learning Python on YouTube and running social media campaigns for student orgs to build my portfolio. I discovered something strange but powerful. When people underestimate you, they don't watch you as closely. And when they're not watching, you can build in silence. You can grow undisturbed. So that's what I did. By senior year, I was consulting small businesses for free. Corner shops run by immigrant families, local artists trying to make Etsy work, young moms with candle brands. I helped them optimize keywords, restructure pricing, and analyze sales data. I didn't charge a cent, but I took notes. Every failure, every win, every pivot, I was building a blueprint. I just didn't know what for yet. I graduated valedictorian. I didn't invite my family. Not because I was bitter, because I no longer needed them to see me. After the ceremony, my mentor pulled me aside. Dr. Blake, the kind of professor who challenged your thinking without crushing your spirit. Alexia, she said, I know you've been offered a few full-time jobs already, but I think you're meant to build something of your own. Me? A founder? The thought scared me. It also electrified me. So I took the leap. Not with funding, not with a team, but with my old notebook filled with case studies, business models, and scribbled ideas I'd been refining for 4 years. I built a website, a lean, bootstrapped consultancy with a single promise, turning overlooked products into profitable stories. Within 3 months, I had 5 clients. Within 6, I had to turn people away. And within a year, I had my first investor call. But through it all, I kept my profile low. No LinkedIn posts, no flashy success stories. My last name didn't mean legacy like it did for Lauren or Dad. It meant shame, according to them. So I let them believe I had vanished. In reality, I was rising. And as the company grew, so did I. I moved into a small apartment with real windows and my first new mattress. I bought myself a proper coat. I learned how to say no without guilt. I learned how to say yes without apologizing. Most of all, I learned how to exist without their permission. But I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. Not until the day a newspaper article changed everything. One morning, while sipping instant coffee, I saw my full name in the business section of a local publication. Young founder turned side hustle into high-growth firm. My photo next to the headline. My words quoted underneath. And within hours, it was everywhere. That's when the phone started ringing again. Old classmates, distant cousins, even my mother. But the call that shook me most? It came from my sister, Lauren. And the only thing she said was, "Wow, you really made something of yourself." That's when I knew. The story was just beginning. The invitation came in a thick ivory envelope, sealed with gold foil. My sister Lauren's handwriting curled on the front like it was still 2008, and she was handing out prom invitations. To Alexia, we hope you'll join us. It was my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. A lavish dinner, black tie, RSVP only. Hosted at the Grand Oak Country Club, the same venue Lauren had her engagement party at, where I'd once been asked to park cars because they were short on staff. I read the note again. No apology, no acknowledgement of years lost, just, We hope you'll join us. Like I'd been away on vacation, not exiled. I closed the envelope and stared out my apartment window. 10 years. 10 years of silence, of watching their holidays play out online without me. Now, suddenly, I was being summoned. Why? Ethan, my co-founder and the only person who knew every inch of my past, walked in holding 2 coffees. He took one look at my face. What happened? They want me at the country club, I said flatly. He raised an eyebrow. You going? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to burn the card. Another part, the part that remembered every insult, every rejection, every moment they said I wasn't good enough, wanted to show up in silence and let my presence speak louder than any comeback. I'm going, I said finally, but not to celebrate them. He grinned, understanding immediately. On the night of the party, I wore a deep emerald satin dress, structured, elegant, unmistakably expensive. Not flashy, powerful. My hair was up, makeup clean. No apologies, no explanations. Ethan drove, wearing a sharp navy suit and the look of a man who knew exactly what he brought to the table. The valet opened my door like I was someone important, which, this time, I was. We entered the ballroom, just as the quartet began to play. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above rows of white linen tables. Waiters floated by with champagne and amuse-bouches. And in the center of it all, Lauren. She spotted me instantly. For a second, her smile faltered. Just a flicker. Then she recovered, striding over with her champagne flute in hand. Well, she said, eyes flicking to Ethan and then back to me. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I wasn't sure I'd be welcome, I replied calmly. She gave a hollow laugh. Of course you are. Tonight's about family. Family. The word landed like a challenge. We were seated 2 tables away from the head table, close enough to hear the speeches, far enough not to be included. I didn't mind. I wasn't here to be honored. I was here to observe. The speeches started after dinner. My father stood first, voice booming with nostalgia and self-importance. 30 years, he said, raising his glass, of love, sacrifice, and legacy. Legacy, that word again. He thanked Lauren for organizing the night, praised her for upholding the family name. When he glanced in my direction, it was brief, almost unintentional, as if my presence was a coincidence, not a choice. My mother went next. Her voice trembled as she spoke of raising 2 beautiful daughters, her eyes lingering on Lauren just a second longer than on me. I sipped my wine. Then came Lauren. Her toast dripped with curated elegance and subtle condescension. Our family has always believed in excellence, she said, smiling sweetly, in choosing the right path, in surrounding ourselves with people who reflect our values. I watched her, stone-faced. Ethan leaned over and whispered, She's baiting you. I nodded. Let her. Because I knew something she didn't. Tomorrow morning, a feature would go live in Forbes Online. The Silent Strategist. How Alexia West built a 12M company from her studio apartment. I didn't need their applause tonight, but I wanted them to see the silence before the storm. I left the dinner early. No dramatic exit. No slammed wine glasses or declarations. Just a quiet thank you to the server and a nod to Ethan. We slipped out before dessert was served, before the evening could claim me as part of its curated narrative. Back at my apartment, I kicked off my heels and curled into the couch. Ethan handed me a blanket and settled beside me. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Tomorrow would do the talking. I was up before sunrise. Not out of nerves, but anticipation. I refreshed the page at 1 a.m. There it was. The Silent Strategist. How Alexia West built a 12M company from her studio apartment. A full-length feature. My story in my terms. Photos of my early prototypes. Snippets of my journal. Quotes from investors, mentors, and even the non-profit I partnered with last year. It was raw, precise, and undeniable. Within the first hour, it was trending on Twitter. By 8 a.m., I had emails from college classmates who used to roll their eyes when I spoke up in marketing class. By 9:15, my LinkedIn DMs were flooded with interview requests. By 10 a.m., my sister called. I let it ring. Then came a message. Lauren, just saw the article, congrats, I guess. I didn't reply. The next call was from my mother. I almost didn't answer, but something in my curiosity maybe hit accept. Alexia? Her voice was quiet, cautious. Morning. I read the article. Your father did too. We're surprised. Surprised I wasn't a failure? I said it without malice, just fact. She sighed. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? She didn't respond. You spent 10 years pretending I didn't exist. I didn't get a single call when I started my business. Not even when I won that state pitch competition 2 years ago. We didn't know, she said weakly. You didn't want to know. Silence. I wasn't looking for an apology. Not anymore. But I needed to say it, to reclaim it. I've spent years rebuilding myself from the scraps your words left behind. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Too late. But I nodded anyway. Thanks. And Pash. By lunch, the article had hit local news, and the headline was impossible to miss. Former valedictorian turned tech CEO, and her family never saw it coming. Lauren posted a cryptic Instagram story. People will rewrite history to feel better about the choices they made. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because in every repost, every comment, every shared quote, people saw me now. My inbox buzzed again. This time, it was from my old high school principal. Alexia, would you be open to speaking at this year's graduation? Graduation. I stared at the message, heart pounding. It was the same ceremony where, 10 years ago, my name had been called last. The applause had been scattered. My family didn't even stand. My cap and gown photos still sat in their basement, hidden behind Lauren's cheerleading trophies. Now they wanted me back as a guest of honor. I said yes. And that's when I realized revenge didn't have to be loud. Sometimes, the sweetest retribution came dressed as success. When I stepped onto the campus of my old high school, it didn't feel haunted anymore. The brick buildings looked smaller than I remembered. The auditorium, once so intimidating, now seemed quaint. The same hallway where I overheard Lauren mocking my acne with her friends, where teachers told me to smile more and stop correcting people, now felt like it belonged to someone else, to someone I had outgrown. Principal Howard met me at the entrance with a warm, firm handshake. Alexia, it's truly an honor. You sure you've got the right person? I smiled. Pretty sure I was once referred to as too intense for her own good. He chuckled nervously. Well, that intensity built an empire. We could use more of it around here. As we walked backstage, I caught sight of the seniors lining up in their gowns. One girl stood off to the side, arms crossed, her dark curls pulled into a tight bun. She looked exactly like me at that age. Smart, angry, alone. I nodded to her. She nodded back. The lights dimmed. My name was announced. And as I walked to the podium, the applause was thunderous, not just polite, but real. I looked out at the sea of young faces, then down at the cue cards I had written. I didn't use them. I was the girl no one invited to prom, the girl who had lunch alone in the library, who got called try-hard because I asked too many questions. A few students laughed knowingly. I was also the girl who spent years thinking she had to become invisible just to be accepted. But let me tell you something. Invisibility is not humility. It's erasure. The room went still. You don't have to shrink to fit into rooms you were born to lead. You don't have to smile when it hurts, or pretend you're okay with crumbs when you deserve the whole damn table. I paused, letting that land. 10 years ago, I graduated from this school, and my own family told me I was the ugly one, the boring one, the afterthought. And now, well, let's just say, they've had to change the way they look at me. A murmur of laughter, claps. If I could leave you with one truth, it's this. There will always be people who define you by your worst day, your worst angle, your least photogenic version. But you get to rewrite that story. And you will. As I stepped down, the girl with the bun met my eyes again. This time, she was smiling. After the ceremony, I lingered in the parking lot. My heels dangled from one hand, and the summer breeze tousled my curls. That's when I saw them. Lauren, my mother, my father, all standing just outside the auditorium doors, watching me. Lauren was in a cream blouse and stilettos that dug into the grass. Her expression was unreadable. Mum clutched her purse like a shield. Dad's arms were crossed. I approached slowly. "You came," I said evenly. "We saw the article," Dad started. "And then we heard about the speech." Lauren didn't speak. "I didn't invite you," I added. "We know," Mom whispered. There was an awkward silence. Then Lauren spoke, sharp and brittle. "Nice little revenge arc you've got going." "This isn't revenge," I replied. "This is healing." "You made us look bad," she snapped. "No," I corrected. "You did that all on your own. I just stopped covering for you." Lauren flinched. I turned to leave. I had nothing more to say. Until Mom reached out and said, almost desperately, "Alexia, we're proud of you." I looked over my shoulder. I didn't do it for you. And with that, I walked toward my car barefoot, free, and finally whole. After I drove off from the school, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was light. For the first time in my life, I had spoken my truth on my terms, and I wasn't waiting for anyone to validate it. Not my parents, not Lauren, not the classmates who had made high school a battlefield. That night, I returned to the hotel where I was staying in town. There was a bouquet of sunflowers waiting at the front desk, no name. No card, but I already knew who it was from. Jade. The same Jade who had been in my corner since freshman year of college, who never flinched when I doubted myself, who told me I was worthy, long before I believed it. I FaceTimed her. "You did it," she said as soon as she answered. "I watched the live stream. That pause after you said, 'Invisibility is not humility.' Chills." I laughed. "I still can't believe I went off script." "That was the whole point, Lex. You weren't reading a story, you were living it." We stayed on the call until my phone battery nearly died. She talked me through the afterglow, the nerves, even the vague ache of seeing my family again. "I didn't expect them to show up," I admitted. "Did you want them to?" she asked. I paused. Part of me did, but only so they could see what they missed. And did they? They tried. But it's too late for "we're proud of you" when they called me a disgrace for so long. I get it. And I'm proud of you for saying that out loud. We said goodnight, and I crawled into bed with my laptop. The school had posted my speech online. Within hours, the video had thousands of views. Comments poured in. "This hit me harder than I expected. Thank you." She spoke what I felt all through high school. My daughter needed to hear this today. She's in 10th grade and struggling with self-worth. "Alexia, please write a book. We need your voice." I sat there in silence, staring at the screen. It wasn't just a speech anymore. It was a spark. The next morning, my inbox had 3 new invitations. A podcast called Women Who Rewrote Their Stories. A TEDx proposal. and an email from a literary agent named Clara Nguyen who wrote, "Have you ever considered turning your journey into a memoir?" I reread that email 5 times. Me? A memoir? But something in me stirred a flicker of curiosity I hadn't felt in years. Not for revenge. Not even for justice. For legacy. What if the very girl they all mocked ended up helping thousands of others stop shrinking, stop apologizing, and start rising? That night, I opened a blank document on my laptop, typed the first line. They called me ugly. I called myself unstoppable. And just like that, the next chapter of my story had begun not in spite of the past, but because of it. The weeks that followed felt like a dream I was finally awake for. Podcast interviews, classroom invitations, even a local magazine feature titled "The Girl Who Came Back Glowing." I was booked solid, but not in a way that made me feel overwhelmed. Every moment felt earned. Every word I spoke had weight. Then one afternoon, I opened my inbox and saw a name I hadn't seen in years. Lauren Miller. Subject line: coffee? I froze. I hadn't thought about my cousin much since the graduation speech. She hadn't reached out, hadn't commented, hadn't liked a single post. Her silence had been loud enough to speak for itself. But now, here she was, asking to catch up. Jade was the first person I told. "She wants something," Jade said flatly. "Maybe," I replied, "but maybe it's more complicated." "Is it? Or are you hoping she's finally changed?" I didn't answer that. I agreed to meet Lauren at a small cafe near the university campus. Neutral ground, no family, no childhood ghosts. She was already there when I arrived, perfect hair, flawless blazer, the same practiced smile. "Alexia," she said, standing to hug me. "You look amazing." "You too," I replied cautiously, keeping the hug brief. We sat. She skipped the small talk. "I watched your speech," she said, "and I've been thinking about it ever since." I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't reach out." "I didn't know what to say," she admitted. "But I've been reevaluating things. What we said back then, how we treated you. I was wrong." Her words were smooth, polished, almost too perfect. Still, I stayed quiet. Let her continue. "I've started therapy," she said, as if it were a badge, "and my therapist said I needed to face the people I hurt." I sipped my coffee, waiting. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she finally said, "for calling you names, for laughing at your pain, for not standing up when I should have." For a moment, I almost softened. But then I remembered the time she had posted a photo of me in the locker room, captioned, "Before and after makeup, guess which is which." I remembered the way she had smiled when my dad said I wasn't photo material. So I looked her in the eye and said, "Thank you for saying that, but I'm not here to offer you closure." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm glad you're in therapy. I hope it helps. But this isn't a redemption arc for you, Lauren. This is my life, my story, and I'm not writing you back into it." Her face dropped. "You're still angry," she said. "No, I'm just done." She looked down at her untouched cup of tea. "So that's it?" "That's it." I stood up. "Take care of yourself. For real this time." And I walked out. That evening, I told Jade everything. "You okay?" she asked. "I am," I said. She thought a few words could erase years of cruelty, but I'm not giving anyone that kind of power again. Jade raised her glass. "To boundaries. To knowing our worth," I added. And for the first time, saying no felt just as powerful as saying yes. 6 months later, the university invited me back this time, not as a speaker, but as the recipient of their annual Trailblazer Alumni Award. I stood on the same stage where I once walked with my head low, diploma in hand, drowned out by the snickers of my own family. Now, the same auditorium echoed with a standing ovation. Professors who once barely noticed me clapped with pride. Students lined up after the ceremony to say, "Your story gave me courage." And my parents, they weren't there. Neither was Lauren. I didn't expect them to be. But something funny happened. As I stepped outside after the ceremony, I felt nothing missing. No hollow space begging to be filled by their approval. I had built a life beyond the limits they once put around me. My days became full not just with work, but with meaning. I started a mentorship program for girls from low-income schools. I taught them how to write personal essays that didn't just meet requirements but made admissions officers cry. I shared my own scars, not to seek sympathy, but to show that the ugliest pasts can birth the brightest futures. Sometimes, I still get messages from people I knew back in high school. "I always knew you were special. You were just a late bloomer." I don't reply. Not out of malice, but because I'm not looking back anymore. Jade and I rented a cabin one weekend in the mountains. Just the two of us. Wine, notebooks, and no cell service. "You know," she said, watching the fire crackle, "you don't talk about them anymore." "I know," I replied, "because I don't think about them anymore." She looked at me with quiet admiration. "I don't think I've ever seen you this free." "It's not freedom from them," I said. "It's freedom from needing them." One evening, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. It was from my mother. A short, uneven note that said, "I saw your article. You looked beautiful. I'm sorry. For a lot of things. I don't know if I can undo it. But I wanted you to know I'm trying." I stared at the letter for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't call. But I folded the paper, placed it in a small box with old photos, and tucked it away. Forgiveness, I'd learned, didn't always need to be loud. Sometimes, it was just choosing to keep walking forward. A few months later, a girl named Lila sat across from me during one of my writing workshops. She looked down, fidgeting with her sleeves. "I don't think I'm good enough," she whispered. I smiled gently. "You don't have to be enough for anyone but yourself." She looked up. "But what if they never see it?" "They will," I said. "But by the time they do, you won't need them to." That's the beauty of becoming yourself. It's not a loud moment. It's not a single headline or applause or award. It's the quiet knowing that you made it despite everything. It's waking up one morning, brushing your teeth, and realizing you're proud of the girl in the mirror. Not because they love her, but because you do. And in the end, that's what makes all the difference.